Welcome to Your Aha Life. I'm your host, Dr. Tanya Harris Cornelius. The Aha Life is a life of more joy, more purpose, and more fulfillment. Through these episodes, I will bring you stories of insight and inspiration to help you live the life that you dream about, the life that you are meant to live, your Aha Life. Enjoy the episode. So, hello, I'm Dr. Tanya Cornelius, and today, welcome to Your Aha Life. Today, this is only my second time doing both video and audio, so this is really awesome to be able to do. And I have a super guest with me, Dr.Emee Vida Estacio out of the UK. And so I'm going to be talking with Emee. Welcome, Emee. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Tonya. I'm so excited.
I'm excited. I'm excited. So before we get started, I want to read your bio so our listeners and viewers will know a little bit more about you. So my notes here. So Dr. Emee Vida Estacio, I'll be calling her Emee throughout our conversation. Emee is the founder of the PAME Code. She is a chartered psychologist with over 20 years of experience in health, community, and positive psychology. Her passion is to help people embrace their true worth, and we'll be talking about that today, so that they can live happy and fulfilling lives. Throughout her academic career, coaching, and research, she has worked closely with individuals and communities to unlock their full potential using simple and easy to apply methods for limitless success in life. Sounds a lot like the Aha Life, so this is perfect. Emee sits on the editorial board of several psychology journals and is an avid supporter of organizations that promote literacy, human rights, and social justice. In particular, she has led and supported projects that aim to promote the well-being of migrant and ethnic minority groups, children and young people, older adults, people with learning disabilities, caregivers, and nurses, so important during this time of the pandemic, LGBTQ groups, and indigenous communities. Emee is passionate about living a purposeful life, and you can just tell that just from what I read, and is keen to help others to do the same through her books, speaking engagements, and coaching practice. She is the #1 best-selling author of the Psychology in Your Life book series, including titles such as The Imposter Syndrome Remedy, which we will also be talking about, Change Your Life for Good, and Fear is Not My Enemy. Those sound so great, Emee. She is now helping aspiring authors like me fulfill their lifelong ambition to write and publish their own books, finding their voice, and with her flagship course, Self-Publishing Made Simple. All of Emee's books are available on Amazon, Audible, and iTunes. Whoa, that's a lot. And I am so thrilled to welcome you, Emee. Welcome to Your Aha Life.
Thank you very much, Tonya. I'm so thrilled to be here and have this conversation with you. And I hope that your listeners and viewers, apparently,
Yes.
now that you have video as well, will find value from our conversation today.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. I thought we would just go through your journey, that you'd help us to see how you got to be where you are today. We all have a backstory. So tell us a little bit of your backstory.
Sure. Well, while you were reading that bio, it just occurred to me that I actually did do quite a bit with my life already. I'm in my late 30s now, and looking back through all my work as a community psychologist, as an author, as a coach, as a mentor, it just gives me a sense of satisfaction that I've done something with my life, and I will continue to do what I can do with my life as I continue this journey. But in terms of my backstory, I have to say that this was never really plan A. None of it was plan A. I would try to do something planned, and then something else happens. I will be in a crossroad, and then I will take another path and just follow where life takes me. But essentially, when I graduated from high school, what I wanted to do was I wanted to become a doctor. I wanted to be a medical professional.
Mm.
And so when I was at the age of 15, I actually did get accepted to go into med school, and start, start my medical, my training as a medical doctor. And at that time, my mom told me, look, yeah, academically you're probably ready, you can manage academically, but at the age of 15, I don't think you have the psychological and social
Mm.
maturity to deal with patients. Maybe you can do the lab stuff, you can do the diagnosis and stuff, but the patient, doctor patient interaction, the risk of losing some patients and so on, I'm probably not ready yet. I'm probably not mature yet. So what my mom suggested was, okay, if you wanted to be a doctor, fine, go for it. But I'd say do a pre-med course first. Perhaps study psychology or something, as a pre-med course. And then after the 4 years, if you still want to be a doctor, then you can just apply again. So yeah, so I followed her advice. I wasn't really in
Yes.
a rush. So I studied psychology for 4 years. I loved it so much. So I decided to pursue that. Instead, I still went for health psychology, so it's still health related, but it's more to do with the psychology rather than the clinical aspects of health and well-being. So coming from the Philippines, I moved here to the UK to do my master's. I only intended to stay here for a year because, yeah, I just wanted to do my master's and then go back to the Philippines and practice. But after I completed my master's, my supervisor gave me a job. He offered me a job to be part of his editorial team. At that time, he was writing a book. He was the editor of a journal. He needed a research assistant. So I was offered a job, and then I was also offered a PhD studentship. So it's like a job, a
I
scholarship. It's
was,
like,
I
why
was, it was keeping you in the UK. It was keeping
That's
you
right.
there. Yes.
So I thought, okay, I'll continue. At least I'm working, I'm gaining experience. I'm learning more about health and community psychology. So it's becoming more and more niche down. So that's where I ended, that's what I ended up doing. I pursued community and health psychology, particularly in terms of health promotion and community development, how we can use psychology to improve the quality of life and well-being of some of the most disadvantaged and marginalized communities in our society. So that's how that's my specialist area. So I did my PhD. I ended up getting a job again as a health promotion fellow. And then just life took me from there. I met my husband, have a baby, became a lecturer. I started getting grants for research projects on health literacy, on community development. I worked with indigenous communities as well to help them to improve their literacy skills. Because if what we found from my research is that if you are unable to read, write, and count, it actually reduces your life expectancy. Because of the
Wow.
opportunities that come to you in life. So that was my passion, and even until now, it still is my passion. To understand the circumstances and opportunities that people have and how that affects their life, their quality of life, their health and well-being. So as a chartered psychologist, as a lecturer, as a researcher, I devoted my academic career in pursuit of community development and health promotion. But at the same time, even if I was doing a lot of work on the ground, I still felt as if there's something missing. Because
Mm.
being in academia, I felt as if I'm just talking to other academics. I felt as if I'm just talking to students and those within my sphere. It was quite limited. And I felt that with the potential of psychology, there's so much that we can offer as a psychologist. So I thought, okay, I have my research papers, I have my textbooks. That's absolutely fine. All the academics can read that.
Yes.
But I know that I could do more and I could reach the masses
Mm.
and get psychology out there, make it more applicable, more practical, and something that lay readers can read and apply. So that's how I ventured into self publishing, because I know that if I self publish my books, I'll have more autonomy over what I can write. I have more control over the timing, because okay, I'm a traditionally published author with, research papers and textbooks, but it takes us months, if not years. I mean, our textbook, it's now in the 6th edition, but it takes us like 2 to 3 years
Right.
before we can publish the new edition. Whereas with self-publishing, you upload it on Amazon in 4 hours, it's out. So
Yes.
it's easier to engage with readers that way. If you have something to say, you put it on Amazon and then it is out. So I explored that and published my books, 3 number 1 bestsellers so far. And now I'm
Yes.
supporting other authors who have this passion as well. All of my students are heart-centered entrepreneurs. They are just people who have a message. They want to give something. They want to share their story. They want to share their knowledge, their expertise.
It's purposeful. It's
Exactly.
purposeful.
And
Yes.
they're so driven and passionate to share what they know to improve the lives of others. And I feel so blessed that I'm attracting these kinds of students in my life. And it's such a pleasure to be able to support them, to get their books out and make it accessible to readers. Because the last thing that I want is for my students to publish something and just collect e-dust, quote unquote, if you like.
True.
But I want their books to be out there and accessed and read by thousands of people who deserve to hear their message. So I teach them how to do that, how to write their books, how to package it, and how to launch it so their message will reach those people who need to hear their message. So that's where I am
That
now.
Oh my gosh, that's so wonderful. And we were going to talk a little bit, and we may circle back to it at the end of how you do just that, because part of it is helping people to really know their voice.
That's right.
And so we're going to dig into that. But you said you're attracting these people, and Emmy, we know that we attract what we vibrate. So you have a vibration that is going out into the world, and that's why it's attracting these heart-centered people who have messages that can help help the masses. So I think that's just incredible work, and I'm so glad that you brought it up as a part of your journey, because it is a part of your journey. So thanks so much for that. I thought we would jump into self-worth, and because when we first met and talked about doing this show together, we talked a lot about self-worth and gaining confidence. And I know that you do a lot of talking around the imposter syndrome. So I'm not sure where you want to jump in from there, but how did you get started in helping people identify their self-worth? Where did
Sure.
that come from?
To be perfectly honest with you, for some selfish reason, I actually wanted to help myself. Because even if I'm a psychologist, thinking that, oh, I'm a psychologist, I'll be okay. I'm not susceptible to all these psychological issues. I'll be fine. Well, actually, after I gave birth to my son, I did experience this low self-worth, low self-esteem, that even from an outsider's perspective, it may seem on paper that I'm actually doing well. And actually, after you've read my bio, it made me realize that actually, yeah, I've done some good things in my life, but why do I feel as if I haven't really accomplished anything? It makes me
Mm,
feel as if maybe I just got lucky, or maybe people are making such a big deal out of what I've done, but it's not really that difficult. I just did what I had to do, and it's no big deal. So for me, I haven't really internalized, or I haven't really made sense of the things that I've done. And when I gave birth to my son, I was just completely exhausted.
mm,
I was just completely drained, trying to figure out how to be a mom, trying to figure out how to, how to go back to work. And actually the environment at work at that time wasn't that supportive either. So that sort of really making me question my worth and my identity. I spiraled into depression. Probably I was experiencing postnatal depression.
Yeah.
On top of that, it's the burnout, the exhaustion, and also seasonal affective disorder. I'm here in the UK. I'm originally from the Philippines. The lack of sunshine every year
Yes.
actually impacts and affects me. But even more so at that time because of all the other layers that's going on in my life. So it took me about 2 years, being in that spiral of depression, this
Mm.
low self-esteem, low self-worth, to the point that I was actually suicidal.
Mm.
It was, and for me, the turning point really was when I actually ended up going to the place where I was going to take my own life. And it occurred to me that, okay, hang on a second. If I end this here now, the people that who will get hurt the most are the ones who are innocent. My son doesn't deserve to lose his mother. It's not his fault. He will experience the trauma of losing
Yeah.
his mother, and it's not his fault. My husband, it's not his fault. My immediate family, it's not their fault that I'm going through this stressful time at work, and this stressful time, trying to figure out my identity and self-worth. So
So I just have to jump in there. So it was your compassion and your love for others that actually, helped you to rationalize why you should live. That's what I'm hearing. How true is that?
well, yeah, I think I just forgot that it's not really just about me anymore, especially
Mm.
considering that I'm a mom. At the back of my mind, I was thinking, okay, if I die, he'll be fine. I have family members who'll take care of him. He'll be fine. But then again, it's the trauma. He would question, why did she take her own life? What happened? So I just couldn't bear the thought of him having to live a life, first of all, without his mother, and knowing how it all ended. When
Yeah.
from the outside, it sounds like I'm successful, that I actually am doing really well with my career. But people haven't got a clue, what's going on inside my head. So
Right.
when I had that aha moment, that's like,
Yes.
okay, this is not on. Then
Yes.
I started to reach out for help. And then that's when things started to get better for me. I reached out to a friend, and that particular friend actually kept me in her office. She locked me in her office, and she said, I'm not going to let you out of my office until you pick up the phone and get medical help.
Mm.
You have to you need to book an appointment, and I'm not gonna let you out of this office until you do that. So it's like a really tough good friend.
That's a good friend. That's a good
She's
friend.
tough, she's a
Yeah.
toughie.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so I yeah, really good friend. But so yeah, so that's when things started to get better for me. And when I was well, I ended up leaving my job because I felt that the environment was really toxic, and I will just go back and forth getting better, and then getting sick again, getting better, getting sick again. So I really had to take myself out of that environment. And when I did, that's when the air started to clear. I wrote
Mm.
my books because I wanted to be clear in my head what sort of strategies I've used that other people can use as well, based on psychology theories. It all started to make sense to me that all of the theories and all of the stuff that I learned in psychology can actually be applied. And I did apply, eventually as I recovered. So I wrote my books, for me initially to make sense of what happened, to give me a little bit of clarity of the strategies that I used. And so when I also practice, when I do my psychology practice, I will have all these resources and tools that I now use with my clients to help them to recover, if they are still in that position where they have lost their sense of self-worth, their confidence,
Yes.
whether it is to do with the circumstances that they are in, or maybe it's just that going backwards and forwards with the thoughts in their mind. The techniques that I've used and now have written in my books and applying in my practice, it actually all comes together, and it's helping me to stay stable, if you
Hmm.
like, because even if I would say I've healed, I still have
Yes.
my weak moments. I'm
We
just
all
human.
do, right? We
Of
all do,
course.
Emmy. Yes.
And I always go back to my books and remind myself, what are these strategies? How can I use it? And it does work. And I hope that by having my books and using it in my practice, that I'm also helping others who are still in that position and need that support to get them out of that,
Yeah.
if they're stuck in a rut.
Yeah, I'll want to maybe dig into a couple of those strategies if we can in a moment, because I think what you're mentioning is so important, and I don't want to lose this point. On the outside, your life looked, if people are looking at your life from the outside, they think, wow, there's this really successful woman. She's married, she has a beautiful child, she has a home, she's doing research, she's writing. So, yeah, we can have lives that on the outside look very successful, but we do have to tend to what's going on in there, what's going on in our minds and our hearts, and the messages that are lingering and within us around our self-worth. And so I think that you bringing this up can speak to a lot of our viewers and listeners in a way that is truly meaningful. So that was one point. The second point, really quickly, and we can move on, is yeah, nothing happens by chance. As even as you told your, yeah, a little bit of your journey, and reading your bio, and getting to the point where you had your own experience with self-doubt, and is my life even worth living, um, and going, you decided to leave your job because of the environment. And so your psychology focuses on the environment, these environmental factors that can impact our overall health and well-being. And we talked about this before, it's the environment sometimes that impacts the cognitive. And so getting to understand that you could no longer go back into that toxic environment if you were really on the path to true healing. So just a couple of points that as I was listening to you, that I wanted to make sure we pause and brought out to those who will listen and watch this
Yes,
episode. Yeah.
certainly. For psychologists, we have this tendency to just focus on our cognitions and the thoughts inside our head, and certainly, yeah, that could be a starting point. But at the same time, we must never lose touch and recognize that the environment could impact on our thoughts as well. So it's quite a complex
Yeah.
thing, but we should never lose track of that. And for me, with my background in community and critical psychology, that's actually what I specialized in. Recognizing that there are power dynamics, there are hierarchies in
Mhm.
society that's beyond the control of the individual, and we need to see that. We need to have conversations around that. Sure that the techniques that I teach in my books and the techniques that I practice in my one-to-one coaching, these are more individualistic, cognitive behaviorist approaches when it comes to managing imposter syndrome. But yeah, we must never lose track that there's only so much that we can do as individuals. There's only so much that your thoughts can do. And you might just go backwards and forwards with your thoughts, but if you are in a toxic environment, if you are trying to do something and it's almost like you're just banging your head on the wall, you need to find a way to to address these environmental and structural issues. And if you need to get yourself out of that environment, to allow you to see what you truly are. Because for me, I actually forgot my worth, being in that kind of environment. And if I can just, talk a little bit about the characteristics of imposter syndrome
Yes,
that
let's go.
I've noticed,
Yes.
um, with my clients, and with my personal experience as well. First is this denial of competence,
Mm.
right? So, you were reading my bio. It sounds like, oh, she's actually done quite a bit. She's, hearing that from someone else, it's not me reading it to someone else. It makes me think like, oh, yeah, yeah, that's actually quite exciting. But the first characteristic is this denial of competence, that you cannot really internalize that it's you. Maybe you'll just attribute it to external factors, like I just got lucky, people are just being nice to me, all the circumstances just aligned, I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. I didn't really contribute much, it wasn't that difficult. You know what I mean? So that's the first characteristic. You couldn't really internalize the success. Even if for some people externally it looks successful, for you it doesn't really count as anything. You're
Mm.
denying yourself of, enjoying the achievements, or even recognizing that you've achieved something. So that could happen inside your head. But when the environment plays down the things that you've done, that you've been contributing things, and it's your own manager that says, it's not nothing special, it's, you're just doing your job, without
Yeah.
recognizing that, what you do contributes, something significant to the organization. When you're actually achieving things, and your environment doesn't recognize, the accomplishments and the contributions that you're making, then yeah, we will have an issue there.
Yeah, because if you're already a little bit down on yourself or not believing your accomplishments, and then you have someone who is in the power system or in the hierarchy of the organization is over you and is meant to be there to support you and to support your growth and development, and that person is saying, that
Exactly.
was nothing, then that
I've been
just
told.
weighs you down even
Mm,
more. And I get it. You either have to address it with that person because maybe they're unconscious to what they are even doing. And everybody has their stuff, so the manager could be having his or her own stuff that they deal with, and it's been passed down a little bit, not to give excuses for it, but you never know. So I think the first thing could be, address it with them. But even after you address it, if it just continues, then yeah, you have to recognize that this is not healthy for your own sense of self-worth and self-esteem.
yeah. So that's the first one. It's that denial of competence, that
Yeah.
you couldn't internalize your own success, and when that is sort of validated as well by your external, the people around you, that it's, that they're playing down on your
And it's
success and
not just,
achievements.
and Emmy, it's not just, we use the work context, right? But it could be people who are closest to you, family members, even parents, or um, again, and I sometimes this happens in the highest achieving kind of groups, because all achievement is considered norm. It's considered normal. So if you grew up in a household where everyone is a high achiever and you do something and they say, yeah, that was that, but
It's
so and so
nothing.
did this, and that can also really weigh on you sometimes when the person is even close to you. Again, not saying intentionally they
Mm.
are trying to do that, but the impact can still be the same.
In that context, yes. for
Yeah.
for me, I've been fortunate that, my family has always been supportive, and
Yeah,
they
that's
are
awesome.
so proud, whenever I have these achievements. They tell me, oh, look at my my
I
daughter. Look at my
know. That's my
sister. It's
dad. That's my dad. He's my
my
biggest
mom used to
cheerleader.
carry my books around. It's like,
Oh,
look, my daughter has it. It's like,
yes. Yes.
ah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So,
even after 30 or 50 publications, she still carries around my
yes.
journal articles and my textbooks. And, I'll give her a copy of my book and she gives it away. It's like, just, for mother's pride. So, that's lovely. But,
Yeah, that's lovely.
terms of,
Yes.
in terms of the workplace,
Yeah.
yeah, certainly that, just to be mindful of that, you might be experiencing your own doubts and lack of self-worth, your inability to internalize success. And what I
Mhm.
usually ask my clients, is that whenever you're ready, just try to compile your wins, if you like. In my book, I talk about the catalog of wins, no matter how small. So for me, I compile, all these little post-it notes that my students give me to say how much they've enjoyed my lecture, or, that I really help them to finish their coursework or whatever. All these little thank you notes. I've kept
Yes.
them. It's still in a box in the garage. I'm keeping these post-it notes. And for me, compiling all the little successes, a new publication, a new grant, a new citation or whatever. These are all compiled. But as I've said, yeah, there's only so much that you can compile. If that's not being recognized in your environment, then you could have a problem. If
Right.
I can give an example, I've been told, in a supervisory meeting, because it's like we're reviewing my performance, right? It's like, okay, I'm on the editorial board. I just published, this the fourth edition of this textbook, and so on and so forth. And the manager says, well, yeah, okay, you actually just got into the editorial board because you know the editor.
Oh,
So, and for me, I'm thinking, yeah, the editor knows like hundreds of people. Not everyone gets into the editorial board. You know what I mean? But when that gets repeated over and over, when you are in a good state of mind, you are able to actually defend yourself and stand your ground.
yeah.
But in my position, when I was in the depressed mode, I was just exhausted from juggling work and life and so on. When I receive that kind of feedback, I just absorb it. I have no energy to
Yeah.
answer back. I have no energy to stand my ground, and you just keep absorbing and absorbing and absorbing until you really internalize it. And
Right.
the next thing you know, you're just down there in the dumps, and just stuck there. And it really does take an awful lot of energy, courage, and self-reflection to get yourself out of that position. So
Yeah.
just be mindful of that first characteristic. It's this inability to internalize success. It's this inability to embrace and recognize the achievements, even just like little compliments. I used to struggle with compliments. Like when people say good things about me, I just feel uncomfortable about it. I would say, oh, you're being too kind. It's
Yeah.
not true. It's like, you know what I mean? So just
Oh,
be
yeah.
mindful of that inability to internalize success.
Yes.
the
What's the
second
next one?
the second characteristic is, for people who experience imposter syndrome, they also have this tendency to be maladaptive perfectionists. So we have to
Whoa.
differentiate between adaptive perfectionism and maladaptive perfectionism. So adaptive perfectionism is when you do something, and then after that you review your performance, see if you could improve some of the flaws, and you perfect it, you try to perfect your craft, and that's absolutely fine. That's adaptive perfectionism. Maladaptive perfectionism, on the other hand, is when you do something, and when you review your work, you just focus on the flaws. You don't even recognize, again, going back to the first characteristic, that you're unable to internalize success. That goes hand in hand with maladaptive perfectionism, when all you could focus on would be the flaws. You couldn't even see what you've done right. So if you had like a 99% success rate, you can only focus on the 1% that you've done wrong. Or for example, in our interview today, maybe I'm sharing too much information,
Yeah.
and I'll just, when I review this, I'll just focus on the times when I stuttered, or the times when I just was out lost for words. So instead of recognizing that I offered things that might be valuable, I just focus on the things that didn't go right. So that's maladaptive perfectionism, because you fail to recognize the strengths, you fail to recognize the good things that you have done, and you beat yourself up too much on things that are quite trivial.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's gonna eat up your self-worth as well, because you're just gonna tell yourself, I'm a failure. I just don't do anything right. And again, if that's going on inside your head and your environment is validating that, if you're not getting any positive feedback from the things that you're doing well, and just focusing on the things that are going wrong, then yeah, it just compounds it. And yeah, it's a
I love, Emmy, that you distinguish between, because we have for the longest lumped perfectionism as one thing and it's all bad. But adaptive perfectionism is, you have high standards for
yeah,
yourself and you want to continue. It's like continuous improvement. You want to
that's right.
continually improve.
It's about recognizing that it's work in progress.
It's a
So
work in progress.
that's
We are
right.
a work in progress,
You
but
wouldn't beat yourself up for making some mistakes.
for little things,
Yeah.
just
But you
all you can
can you can
do.
fix it.
And I think that's so important, because we can have a sea of successes around us, and we ignore all of that and we focus on where we might have had this failure or where one thing didn't go right. And so I love that you distinguish between those two. What are some other characteristics of the imposter syndrome?
Yeah. So the third characteristic, and the last one is this
Okay.
the you're just terrified that people are gonna find out that you're
Mm.
incompetent and that you're a fraud. It's this fear that people are going to judge you, that people are going to find out that you don't deserve your success. So for a lot of early career professionals, they experience imposter syndrome because they are new at what they are doing, and they are scared that people will find out that they don't deserve their job, or that people are going to find out that they're not qualified or that they're incompetent. So that's quite common in early career professionals. But at the same time, those who are already at the peak of their careers, the more experienced professionals, they actually experience imposter syndrome as well, because at the back of their mind, they would think, I've managed to hide my incompetence for so long. I managed to fool everyone into believing that I'm good. And sooner or later they're going to find out. So it's just that anxiety, that stress, that sooner or later you will be exposed for your incompetence, and for your inability to deliver what you've been asked to deliver. So if I'll just give an example, in my
Yeah,
own
sure.
experience, it all again goes back to the time when I returned from maternity leave, returning to work after maternity leave. I experienced imposter syndrome even before that. I have to confess that even if I'm doing a good job, I would say something like, it's not that I was good, it's that I actually put in a lot of time and a lot of hard work, because that's my way to compensate for my imposter syndrome.
Mm.
I would work 60 hours a week, because I would think, I know that what I'm doing is not good enough. So if I put in more effort, if I put in more hours, then I at least I could give as much as I can until I'm actually absolutely exhausted. I'll give everything I've got. At least that way people wouldn't find out that I'm incompetent. So that was my coping, if you can say coping.
Coping. Yeah.
It's not really an adaptive way to cope, but that's how I coped with imposter syndrome. I was trying to hide my insecurities and my self-doubt by overworking, by overstretching. So I will work, I will write a research paper, for example, and I will spend 10 or 20 times reading and editing like all the little things that I could find on my research paper, and then send it off when it's actually I haven't got enough time left. But I
Right.
will really stretch myself. So when I gave birth, it just wasn't possible. It wasn't possible to spend 60 hours a week anymore for my work, because I have a child now. I haven't got the time. So I it the coping strategies that I used before I gave birth, it just wasn't
Didn't work.
didn't work anymore.
Didn't
So
have the time to do those things.
that's right. And at the same
Yeah.
time, the burnout, the exhaustion, a lot of people, even if they haven't got a child,
Right.
they will end up getting burned out. Their relationships could suffer because they are spending too much time and effort on trivial things at work.
Yeah.
So yeah, so because it's that fear, for imposters, for those who experience imposter syndrome, it's that fear that people are going to find out that you're incompetent, and you try to hide it, whatever coping mechanism that you might find. So
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 here we
those
have
are
it, these three. So the inability to internalize your own success and just own your success. And then this maladaptive perfectionism versus adaptive perfectionism. And then this last one you just mentioned about,
you're just scared
you're
that people
just
are
scared
gonna
that you're
find
going to be
out.
found out in some way. And so all these things you do to overcompensate kind of in an unhealthy way, to compensate for this imposter syndrome. So why don't we turn the tables here a little bit, and you tell us some of the positive coping strategies that people, when because we all have that, those little voices do come to us. I don't care how accomplished we are. I mean, a lot of times it is because you have a lot of success around you, and from you, but those voices will still come. So what are some coping strategies that you share with your clients that maybe our viewers and listeners can learn from?
Sure. One of the strategies that I teach is called the TLC technique. Now, before we talk about that, let's talk a little bit about your inner critic first.
Oh,
This voice,
yes.
this voice
Yeah.
inside your head that tells you you're not good enough, that you're a
Okay. Yes, let's
failure,
go
that you're
there.
all of that. So some self-help gurus might ask you to crush it, to silence, just ignore your inner critic, just banish it, fight it. It's not adaptive. Just ignore it and fight your inner critic. But what I would say is give it a bit of TLC. And when I talk about TLC, it's not really tender loving care. It's not about giving inner critic a tender loving break, but it's close to that. It's actually related to compassionate self-talk,
Mm,
because when we talk about your inner critic, it's a voice inside your head, but ultimately it's still your head. So if you're gonna have a fight with it, if you're gonna banish it, if you're trying to suppress it, you're really just ignoring your emotions, you're ignoring your fears, you're burying it, and you're not really dealing with it in an adaptive way. So for me, the maladaptive way is like, okay, I'll ignore that, I'll just get on with it. But actually, you really need to explore what your inner critic is telling you. You don't necessarily have to follow it, but you need to explore where it's coming from, and what you need to do about it. And that's why I developed the TLC questioning sequence. It's three questions that you ask yourself when you hear your inner critic message. And this is it true? Is it logical? Is it constructive? So for example,
wow.
if your inner critic is telling you you're not qualified to do this, maybe you've been given a new responsibility, a new role, and the inner critic is saying, you're not good enough to do this, you're not qualified to do this. The first question is, you ask, is it true? Is it true that you're not qualified to do this? Because more likely than not, it's actually a lie. Your inner critic is just telling you this to protect you from the potential risk of failure. The inner critic is afraid that you might fail, and the inner critic is afraid that you might lose face if you fail. That's why it's telling you that you're not qualified, so it will stop you from doing it. But when you ask the first question, is it true? Is it true that you're not qualified? Look at the evidence, look at your track record, look at your skills, your qualifications, and it's likely that you are actually qualified. You're just,
Yes.
your inner critic is just whispering that because it's afraid. So that's the first question. The second question is it logical? So if again the inner critic is telling you, oh, you're not qualified to do that, don't do that, you're gonna fail. The second question is it logical? If someone trusted you to do something, and if it's crucial to the success of the project, why would they ask you if you're not qualified to do it? It doesn't really make sense. It's not logical,
Right.
right? And another common inner critic message that I hear from my clients, for example, especially for the early career ones, they would say something like, I've never done this before. I shouldn't do this. I've never done this before. So the first question is it true? It might be true that you've never done it before. But the second question is it logical? Just because you haven't done it before, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it at all. It just means that you're new at it. And
Right.
that's all. The more you do it, the more you practice it, the more experience you'll get. And then eventually you will be experienced. At this stage, yes, you're new, but just because you're new, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it at all. Everyone has to start somewhere,
Right.
right? So that's the second question. Is it
Mm.
logical? The third question is it constructive? So yeah, this one, the example that I'll give you, one of my clients is she's a teacher in New York, and she told me that oh, I'm not good at what I do because all of my colleagues are doing so much better than me. They have more innovative things that they do in the classroom, and I'm just not as good as them, so that makes me a failure.
The
And this,
comparison. Oh
yeah,
my God. I have to do a
social
show just
media,
on, I have to do a show one day just on
social
co-
comparison.
social comparison. Maybe I'll invite you back for that, because that is
It's
such
like,
the enemy of
yeah,
your
we
finding
it's
your true
almost like
worth.
we measure our self-worth based on the success of others. So if you apply the TLC questioning sequence again, is it true that your colleagues are doing better than you? And I actually asked that to my client. Is it true that they're doing better than you? And she would say, yeah, that's what I can see. And I asked her, do you have evidence for it? And she said, well, no, it's just what I see. That's just from her perspective.
Exactly.
And I said, do you have like a grading scale or something that shows you that they're above you? And she said, no, not really. So okay, so that's just your perspective. The second question is it logical? No, just because you think they are doing better than you, does it mean that you're a failure? It
Right.
doesn't make sense to use their performance as a measure of your success unless it is like athletics or something, that it's an actual competition.
And even
Even
then,
then
I
you have
think
your personal best,
you
right?
have your personal best, and we all walk, when we are most successful, when we walk our lane, when we seize what's in our, path to do. And so, yeah, we'll have to talk one day about this social
Yeah.
comparison thing.
So
Yeah.
so yeah, so that's the second question you ask. Is it logical? And the third one is it constructive? So let us assume that it is true that they're doing better than you, and let us assume that you are a failure, if you want, because they're doing better than you. It's just an assumption. But is it constructive? How does it help you in any way? How does the social comparison help you or help them? And how do you make this constructive? If they are doing better than you, what can you learn from them? Is there any good practice that they are doing that you can adapt, in your own practice?
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
So it's a
If
learning
someone is
thing.
doing better than me at something, I have a learner orientation anyway. I mean, we're both PhDs, so we like to go deep into to studies, and so forth. But I'm thankful for that side of that quality that is within me, that I am a learner. I'm less a competitor and more a learner. And that has
Yeah.
served me well, because when I see someone doing something that I admire and I love, and I'm not as great at that,
You
I
learn.
I lean into them. I move toward them so I can learn what they're doing,
You
and
celebrate their
I
success.
celebrate their success, because their success does not take away from my success, In fact, their success can help me to be more successful. I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes it's not easy. I don't want to minimize the emotion that comes
Mm.
with that, and this comparison, because it's strong. It can be quite strong in us, but I think if we reframe, it's a reframing. Like you said, is it constructive? How do you make that constructive for you, that they are doing so well? I love that.
So that's the third question, is it constructive? How does comparing yourself to them even, is that even a reflection of your own success? And to make it constructive, what can you learn from them? How can you celebrate their success and learn from them, and in that way you actually grow and develop because they are in your circle. So I was asking my
Absolutely.
client, look, if you are surrounded by these amazing people, by these innovative people who does all these amazing things in the classroom, isn't that just an amazing environment to be in and learn and grow from these people? So yeah, so that's
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
something.
I'm so glad you asked, could you go down the path of the inner critic? It was on my notes, and I was zooming past it, literally. So I'm so glad we did that. So TLC is it true? Is it logical? And is it constructive? And going through those three questions can help you really kind of debunk some of the messages that the inner critic is feeding you. Now, we only have a few more minutes, so let's take a look at some of. Okay, say yes, I'm dealing with imposter syndrome. I try to talk to myself and all of that. What are some other strategies that you might offer to our viewers and listeners?
Certainly. So the TLC questioning sequence, usually it
Yes.
works, but sometimes all the inner critic messages that we have might be so ingrained that we don't even realize that the messages that we hold are untrue, illogical, and destructive. That's why having a mentor, a friend, a
Mm,
therapist, a coach, whatever, someone who can support you and guide you through this process can help you understand the thought processes that's going on inside your head. So I get this all the time, with my clients. When we apply the TLC questioning sequence, when we explore their inner critic messages, some of the messages that they hold are so ingrained that it takes an outsider's perspective to sort of poke you a little bit
yeah.
and tell you, look, it's not true. Like,
Yeah.
where's your evidence? You hold it to be true because you believed it for all your life, maybe.
Yeah.
That you've been holding on to these beliefs since you were a child, and now someone asks you, is it true? And you will answer, of course it is. This is the truth that I can see. But when you have a mentor, a friend, a coach, someone who challenges that in a compassionate way, to ask, well, are you sure it's true? Because I don't actually see any evidence to support that. They have that light bulb moments like, oh my goodness,
Yeah. Aha.
I've never seen that in it from that way before. So yeah, so that's another thing that I would say. And this goes in line with my practice. I call it PAME. It's called the
Yes. Let's
PAME
go to
code.
Pame.
Yes, let's
Yes.
go
Oh
to
my
PAME
gosh.
because
Yes.
it's the Greek word that means let's go together. It's like PAME, PAME. My husband's Greek. He said PAME, PAME. It's come on, let's go together. You don't have to go through this journey on your own. Life becomes more, it's sweeter, it is more, it gets lighter when you share it with someone else. So for me,
Shared joy
share
joy
the joy and
is
share.
double joy. Share,
That's right.
shared
That's right.
sorrow is half sorrow. It's always better when you
Yeah,
have,
you
you
just
know,
share it
yeah,
with others. When I came here in the UK, I've been quite independent. I just did my own stuff and lived on my own and did my own thing. It was quite lonely. But when I
mm,
realized that I can actually connect with people, and when I did experience depression, feeling as if the whole world is on my shoulders, when I realized that there are actually people around me who would be devastated if I actually took my own life. All I had to do was reach out and ask for help, and they would be more than happy to support me. They would ask, why didn't you ask in the first place? So it's
yeah.
reach out and share.
Les Brown has a quote. I'm not going to get it, just right. Won't be perfect, but it'll be close. But he says it is, you don't ask for help because you're weak. You ask for help because you want to remain strong. I just love that
Love that.
because sometimes we think, oh, if we ask for help, that's some kind of flaw in us. And it could be in your home life or in your work life or wherever. But, remember that asking for help is not because you're weak. Actually, it's because you want to remain strong. And I,
That's
I love
right.
that. Yeah,
So, yeah, you can ask for help, but at the same time, going back to my critical psychology hat on, that you can do that as an individual. Whenever you're ready, ask for help. But from a critical environmental perspective, some people who need help don't even realize that they need help.
that's
It's
true.
not that they are afraid to ask for help. It's not that they are embarrassed to ask for help. They just don't realize that they need it. And I've experienced that myself, because for me, I've always identified myself as a strong, independent person. I'm not someone who needs help right now. And it does need, it does take an external person to poke you a little bit and ask, are you okay? Just
Hmm.
to show a bit of concern. So, it goes both ways. There's only so much that we can do as an individual. And sometimes for those people who actually do need help, they don't even realize that they
That's
need
so
it.
true. That's so
So
true.
if you are someone who's a little bit concerned about someone else, just ask, are you okay? Do you want to talk? Do you want to catch up? You don't necessarily have to poke them and tell, are you, it's like, what's going on with you?
What's
Tell
going
me,
on
what's
with
wrong
you?
with you? What's wrong
Yeah.
with you? Nothing like that, but just say that, you're there if you need anything. I'm here. I have ears. You can talk to me if you need someone to talk to. So yeah, so that's what really Pame is all about. We can go together. If you need help, ask for help. And if you can see that someone needs help, offer, be there, and we can go through this together.
Yeah, so I'll just give the pame is a word, Greek word, like you said, let's go together. For your practice, you use it as P for purpose, A for action, M for momentum, and E for energy. And so that's I thought that was really good. And I'm assuming that each of those is ways in which you work with your clients.
That's right. And actually, even with now, I have clients who are aspiring authors, those who want to share their message, those who are feeling a little bit unsure if they're good enough to write a book. They know that they have something, they have this burning message that they want to share with the world, but they're feeling as if, I don't think I'm good enough to write a book, or I'm not sure if my message is actually worth sharing. You're feeling quite doubtful about it. When we go through the PAME process, you tap into your purpose, understand your purpose, know your core values, know the legacy that you want to bring into this world. But at the same time, you need to couple that with action, because if you're just thinking about these things and you feel these things without really doing anything about it, it just stays with you. You actually have to do something, so you actually get to share it with the world. So purpose, action, momentum, keep going, keep the consistent action, and maintain the energy. We try to work energetically as well, following in your intuition, connecting with people who who are actually aligned with, what you do, and what's your purpose. And in that way, you fulfill it. For my students who are writing books, this is what I help them with. I show them how to write their books, how to find their confidence,
Right.
to write their books. But at the same time, I'm a little bit, I sort of have a stick, almost like, yeah, get on with it, action, action, action. Well, it's that consistency. You need to have action, you need to couple it with action. And the action that we follow in the self-publishing made simple process, it's taking it a step at a time to avoid feeling overwhelmed, but also having a plan, having a launch strategy. So your action is focused action. You know your purpose, you know your
Mm,
goal, and making sure that your strategy is in line with that goal. So if your goal is to reach your audience, then we will take steps to reach your audience. If your goal is to get it to number one bestseller, then we will have a strategy to get you to number one bestseller on Amazon. So it's focused, consistent
yeah.
action that is also in line with your energy.
Yeah. Emmy, oh my gosh, this has been great. I think we covered it all, though. I was not sure we were going to be able to cover
It's
everything.
so much.
It's so much, and I know we could have gone on and on, but I want to thank you once again for being such a super guest on your Aha Life. So I have a final question that I ask all of my guests, and that is, the Aha Life. How do you define your Aha Life, and how do you live your Aha Life?
Yes, well, for me, that again goes back to Pame. It's about
Mm,
going together. And when you live your life with purpose, couple that with action, have the momentum, the consistency, and also the energy, then you could fulfill your potential. You can fulfill your purpose, but you need to ground yourself in your purpose. Surround yourself with positive people. Be grateful for what you have, and share it. Just share it with the world, share it with the people around you, and be a blessing to others around you.
yeah, so great, so great. Now, one more thing. How will viewers, these listeners, get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Well, the best way to find me is to, first of all, my books. You can find my books on Amazon. They're available on print, Kindle, and audiobook versions. So the first book is called Change Your Life for Good. The second one is the one that we talked about today, Imposter Syndrome Remedy. And the third one is called Fear is Not My Enemy. So if you want to learn more about those topics, you can find my books on Amazon. And if you would like to find me on Facebook, and if you're an aspiring author, I run a free Facebook community called Self-Publishing Made Simple. So I'm there. I go live every Tuesday for live Ask
Mm,
Me Anything. We have accountability and support. So feel free to join us if you feel as if you have this burning message that you want to share with the world, and write it as a book. Facebook community, Self-Publishing Made Simple. It's free, and I'm there every week
yeah,
to answer all your questions.
that's fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much again for being on your Aha Live. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Tonya. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for watching. I'm Dr. Tanya Harris Cornelius. Come back again in another couple of weeks for a brand new episode. Hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you soon.